Lila had always been proud of her old Victorian house, a fixer-upper she'd bought cheap in a small town no one visited anymore. The place was a maze of creaky floors and peeling wallpaper, but she loved its charm. The high ceilings, the stained glass windows, the history etched into every corner. She lived alone, pouring her savings into renovations, and by last summer, she'd finally finished the guest room on the second floor. It was her masterpiece: fresh paint, a four-poster bed, and a view of the overgrown garden. She didn't have guests often, but the room felt like a promise of better days. The trouble started when she listed the room on a vacation rental app. She didn't need the money, but the idea of strangers enjoying her work excited her. The first booking came quickly, a man named David, traveling solo, who said he was a writer looking for a quiet place to finish his novel. His profile was bare, just a grainy photo of a middle-aged guy with glasses, but his message was polite, and Lila confirmed the stay. David arrived on a Friday evening, his rental car crunching up the gravel drive. He was taller than she'd expected, with a nervous smile and a duffel bag slung over his shoulder. He complimented the house, said it was perfect for his work, and asked to be left alone to write. Lila was happy to oblige. She wasn't one for small talk. She showed him to the guest room, handed him the key, and went to bed early, the hum of the old house lulling her to sleep. Around 3 a.m., she woke to a sound, a low, rhythmic thumping like someone pacing in the room above hers. The guest room. She lay still, listening, her heart picking up speed. The thumping stopped, then started again, deliberate and heavy. She told herself David was probably restless, maybe moving furniture to get comfortable. Writers were weird like that, but the sound didn't let up, and by 4 a.m. she was wide awake, staring at the ceiling. The next morning, David was already at the kitchen table when she came downstairs, sipping coffee he'd made himself. He looked tired, his glasses smudged, but he smiled and thanked her for the comfortable bed. Lila hesitated, then asked if he'd been up late. "Just writing," he said, tapping his laptop. "Lost track of time." She didn't mention the thumping, not wanting to seem nosy, but something about his quick answer unsettled her. That night the thumping returned, louder and faster, joined by a faint scraping, like nails on wood. Lila sat up in bed, her skin prickling. The sounds were too deliberate to be footsteps, more like something dragging across the floor, stopping and starting in bursts. She grabbed her phone, ready to text David to check on him, but realized she didn't have his number, only the app's messaging system. The scraping grew sharper, and for a moment, she swore she heard a voice, a low murmur, too muffled to make out. She crept upstairs, her bare feet cold on the hardwood, and stood outside the guest room door. The sound stopped abruptly, as if whatever was inside knew she was there. She knocked softly, calling David's name, but got no answer. The silence was worse than the noise. She tried the knob, but it was locked, the key on David's side. Defeated, she went back to bed, promising herself she'd talk to him in the morning. But David was gone when she woke up. His car wasn't in the driveway, and the guest room door was wide open. The bed was unmade, the sheets tangled, but his duffel bag and laptop were gone. The app showed he'd checked out early, leaving a generic 5-star review. Great stay, very quiet. Lila felt a mix of relief and unease. She cleaned the room, trying to shake the feeling that something was off. That's when she noticed the scratches. Deep, jagged marks in the floorboards under the bed, like someone had clawed at the wood. She ran her fingers over them, her stomach churning. They weren't there before. She called the rental app support line, asking if they could contact David about possible damage. The agent was apologetic, but said his account was deactivated, his payment processed through a prepaid card that couldn't be traced. "It happens sometimes," the agent said. "People use fake names." Lila hung up, her mind racing. She decided to take the listing down. No more strangers in her house. That night, the thumping started again. Lila bolted upright, her breath catching. The guest room was empty, the door still open from when she'd cleaned it. The sound was unmistakable, coming from above, faster now, almost frantic. She grabbed a flashlight and a crowbar from the toolbox, her hands shaking as she climbed the stairs. The guest room was dark, the air heavy with a sour, unfamiliar smell. The thumping stopped as she crossed the threshold, but the scratches under the bed seemed deeper, fresher. She knelt, shining the flashlight under the bed. The beam caught something, a small, leather-bound notebook, wedged against the wall. Her fingers trembled as she pulled it out. The pages were filled with frantic handwriting, not David's neat script from his messages, but something jagged and unhinged. "It's in the walls," one page read. "It knows I'm here." Another, "Don't sleep. It waits." The last page had her name, scrawled over and over, circled in red ink. Lila dropped the notebook, her pulse roaring in her ears. The thumping started again, not from the floor but from inside the walls, a steady beat that shook the plaster. She stumbled back, the crowbar slipping from her hand. The lights flickered, and the sour smell grew stronger, choking her. She ran downstairs, grabbed her keys and drove to a motel, not looking back. The next day, she hired a contractor to inspect the house. He found nothing unusual, no animals, no structural issues, no explanation for the sounds or the smell. But when he checked the guest room, he paused, pointing to the wall behind the bed. The wallpaper was slightly raised, as if something had been sealed behind it. Lila didn't wait for him to tear it open. She told him to stop, paid him, and left. She put the house up for sale that week, taking a loss she couldn't afford. The realtor asked why, and Lila just said she needed a change. She never told anyone about the notebook or the scratches. But she kept the crowbar in her new apartment, always within reach. Sometimes, in the dead of night, she'd wake to a faint thump, distant but familiar, and she'd lie there, eyes wide, wondering if she'd ever really left the guest room behind.